Well, I can say it's going to be a little bit easier than London. However, I think that every marathon in the world is probably a little bit easier than London at the moment.
Are you running a marathon? Oh my god, I could never run a marathon. You sure about that? My god, a marathon is like 42 kilometers, 26 miles. I don't understand those people. That used to be me.
But not anymore. Welcome to the Marathon Podcast, a special edition, bonus episode of that Sydney Marathon edition, actually. My name is Christian Warwick, aka Warwick Runs on different platforms. If you're new to the podcast, welcome. If you're a regular listener, welcome back. Really appreciate you guys being here. If you haven't already, please give this podcast a review. I would really, really appreciate that. And share it with a friend. In this special episode of the Marathon Podcast, we are talking to James Constantine, who is the digital marketing manager of the Sydney Marathon. We are talking about everything from the course, about the runners this year, the elite, which is Kipchoge and Hassan. We're talking about what he thinks that the winning times will be like. We're talking about the bib numbers that you might not have received yet if you're running the Sydney Marathon this year. We're talking about next year's Sydney Marathon. We're talking about everything you need to know before running this year or entering next year. We're also obviously talking about how the Sydney Marathon became the next major, because this is the first year that they are one of the major marathons. This was a very, very interesting and useful conversation. I think that if you are running or planning on running, you definitely need to hear this episode. Before we jump into that, I just want to thank you all so much for listening. I was looking at some of these charts today, and actually the Marathon Podcast is really trending these days and up at like top 15 within the US, UK, and Australia in terms of rankings of running podcasts. I don't know if these rankings are real time or not, but just seeing the Marathon Podcast being up there is a lot of fun. So thank you again for listening. Thanks for sharing these or sharing the podcast with other people, because I assume that's what you've done since more people are noticing. I'm not going to waste any more time here. I really hope you'll enjoy this conversation with James as much as I did. Here is James Constantine. Welcome to the Marathon Podcast, James. How is your day?
Christian, thanks so much for having me on. My day has been great. It's been very busy. It's 6 days out from the TCS Sydney Marathon, but another good day.
Yeah. Before we jump into who you are, just tell me, what does a normal day look like for you, or are there any normal days at all these days?
It's a great question. I think at the moment, everything's a little bit abnormal. At the moment, everything's sort of really coming together we're in the last kilometer before the start line. So everything's sort of coming together, which is great. But yeah, I mean, normal day is a great question because, I feel like we already have 2 days that are identical at the TCS Sydney Marathon organising team. We get thrown different challenges every day, which is great. I think one of the things that I've really loved over the last few months is working a lot more closely with the World Marathon Majors team, their social team and their communications team. I think being welcomed into the Majors family since November last year has been really good for just my development and my knowledge of the Majors, but also throwing up new challenges that we didn't have when we were in the Majors. So that's probably one of my favorite things over the last few months. But I guess, in terms of my role, it's a lot to do with digital, so a lot of social media, a lot of emails, a lot of website, a little bit of advertising here and there. We've got currently a great campaign with lots of flags around the city and billboards on buses and trains and things like that. So that's exciting as well. So yeah, lots of different stuff.
Yeah, cool. So the reason I wanted to have you on, obviously you did mention it, we're the day of recording this, we're 6 days away from the Sydney Marathon. And it's a big year for you guys. Before we dive into why it's a bigger year than usual, why don't you present yourself, your role, and also a little bit of your own running experience and journey?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm the senior digital marketing manager for Pond 3, who run the TCS Sydney Marathon presented by ASICS. Most people don't really know that there's the business behind the event. We deliver the event, but we're an events company. We do running events, and we have a few other different events in Sydney. We have a 5K and a 10K, which we delivered just over a month ago, which was great. It had about 7,500 people. We also organise an ultra marathon around the foreshore of Sydney. It's 80 kilometres. And we also have a relay event as well. And we do some other events as well, like fun runs and charity events and things like that. But I think Pont3 is also looking to, I guess, with the newfound major status of the marathon, potentially look to do more in years to come, which is really exciting for the business. In terms of my role, like I said, a lot of it is digital, and I just leave running basically everything that's going on in the world of running. I try and keep my finger on the pulse and make sure that I'm up to speed with all the news, whether it's from elite athletes to how many people are trying to get their seventh star in Sydney, to trends, shoes, equipment, what's permissible on Strava, and everything in between. So yeah, a lot of my life is sort of tied up in terms of my passion and my job with running. But yeah, I'm very lucky to be in the position that I have.
Yeah, I can only imagine that it must be a lot of fun. Obviously, with a big event like this one, I'm sure it's a bit different than the smaller events, but still being able to work with running, and it sounds like we're both very passionate about it. So uh, I guess it's a great privilege to be able to work with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think anytime that someone works in the industry that they enjoy outside of work is a real blessing. And then that's what it is. I'm privileged to be able to work for the TCS Indy Marathon and to walk into work every day, and very often it feel not like work at all. It feels like a passion. It feels like something that I'd probably be doing in my spare time anyway, outside of hanging out with my family and my friends. Which is the priorities in life change when I recently became a dad, and I think that definitely gives you new scope on life and what you really want to spend your time doing. But running will always be there in work for my personal life. I think you mentioned before about my running. I've only run one world major. I ran Berlin in 2019. That's where I ran my first and only sub 3 hour marathon. I ran 2:52. I'd love to beat
That's
that
great.
time. It's been 6 years since then, so I'd love to beat that time someday. But yeah, running has been a big part of my life probably since university. I started to really get into running quite a bit. Trying to keep off drinking beer too much and try to keep a little bit fitter and healthier than probably what I was when I was 18. And I just fell in love with it for the social side. I joined a couple of different run clubs with Nike and Adidas over the years when they had very well established run clubs in Sydney. Became a pacer for a couple of those institutions, and then found myself getting a job in our state athletics association, Athletics New South Wales, and then I moved to the Pontaree and the TCS Sydney Marathon just over 2 years ago. So yeah, a big part of my life is definitely wrapped up in running.
Yeah, and I want to talk more about that later in our conversation about your running and your goals too. But how long have you been connected to or worked with the Sydney Marathon?
Yeah, just over 2 years. I started in late May 2023. Um,
Mm.
and that was a really interesting time for the event because the TCS Sydney Marathon became a candidate race for the ABBA World Marathon Majors just before the 2022 event. I think it was a few weeks beforehand. So that first year, the team, which was about one third of the size it is now, didn't have a lot of time to get to really capitalize on the announcement. And they have 5,000 runners in the marathon in 2022. So when I came in, we already had more entries than that. I think we had about eight or 9,000 entries in late May for the event, which was the third weekend of September in 2023. And we already knew that we were, breaking new ground in terms of marathons in Australia. And traditionally, marathons in Australia aren't the distance that Australians would run. I think a lot of that is to do with the warmer weather that we experience. A lot of people would love half marathons. I'd run many, many more half marathons and 10K races than I have marathons. So we really needed to try and transform Australia into a marathon nation, and that wasn't easy. There was a lot of resource, a lot of in terms of people, but also marketing dollars, and a lot of our funding has fortunately come from Destination New South Wales. The New South Wales Tourism Board is one of our major strategic partners, and they've really made a lot of areas of the business and the event possible because of the backing that they've provided. And one of the things that they've loved to see is the international tourism, people coming to the event. Like, there's only so many Australians that will run marathons. It's a pool that's definitely grown, but we really needed to open up the TCS Sydney Marathon to the world. And in order to be able to do that, you need to make yourself aware and people aware of it and relevant around the world as well. Really sell the idea of Sydney and the idea of running a marathon in Sydney, to be one that people really would actually jump on a plane sometimes for over 24 hours to come and run 42.2 kilometers. So yeah, it was a big challenge, and that was the sort of challenge that we were faced with when I started, or just before I started. But I think the thing about On Three is, our race director Wayne Larden. He's a 2:16 marathoner, and he ran a couple of times for Australia at the World Cross Country Championships in the 90s. And him having that understanding, very deep understanding of running and marathon, and having a great team around him as well, of people who really understood runners and understood what was required of the marathon to be able to grow and to be able to get a lot of people on side as well. I think that was a very important thing to connect with the runners to really, again, sell the event both in Australia and across the world. So yeah, that's a little snapshot, I guess, of some of the challenges that we've been able to overcome over the last couple of years to grow the event.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up because that was one of my questions. I was talking to my fiance yesterday, and we were like, "So, what does it really take to become one of the majors?" And now, obviously, like you've had the 6 majors for a long time. Sydney is the 7th, right? And then last year you had kind of a big test where I guess you were tested in terms of like you already got through some kind of process, and then the last big test was the 24 Sydney Marathon. And before that event and during that event, what are you tested on, and how are the nerves before an event like that when you know that everything needs to go according to plans so we can actually get this 7th major race?
Absolutely. Oh, it is nerve wracking. And that's coming from someone in marketing, let alone someone working in operations or weighing. I mean, there's things that you can control, and then there's things you can't control. So one of the major talking points in 2023 was it was an amazing event. I mean, we had 17,000 registrations. We had almost 14,000 finishes. It was a huge increase on 2022. We knew that we were on the right track, but the weather, it got up to a maximum of 31 degrees, which a lot of people, particularly those who are coming from overseas, was a very rude shock. And I think a lot of people, where we were moving towards 2024, and we were fortunately sold out in May last year at 25,000 registrations. A lot of people thought, oh my God, is it going to be 30 degrees again? So that's one of the things you can't control. You can put the event in a really nice time of year, and late August is a beautiful time to run in Sydney. I think today was a maximum of 18 degrees and it was sunny. So if we held the event today, it would have been about 10 or 11 degrees, which is just, it doesn't get better than that
Hmm.
temperature in Australia. But we can't control what it's going to be on event day. So that's one thing that you can plan for. You can have more water, more medical staff, things like that. But then the things you can control, there's a lot of them. And I think that's where our team have done a fantastic job in getting more resource, but also, again, the people who, particularly in our operations team, have done such a good job at accommodating that huge increase in runners, because we all know what can happen at big events when you have a lot of people. Toilets at the start line is always a big one. Crowding at the start line, not having the waves spaced out enough to be able to go across the start line smoothly. um, you know, potentially running out of water on course. All these things that can happen when a lot more people in a very short amount of time do your event uh, can happen. But fortunately, we've really avoided the vast majority of things that can hold you up. So, in saying that, we've learned along the way as well. I mean, again, because we've grown so quickly, and this is our first year as a major. Like, we are learning a lot from the other six majors. We're consistently talking to their operations teams. I've talked to at the social media marketing manager at London Marathon a couple of months ago, and this information sharing between the events is also something that we've been really fortunate, or at least I've been very fortunate to be a part of as well, and to continue to understand what it really means to be a major, what it really means to be one of the seven best marathons in the world. So yeah, there's a lot that we've learned along the way. There's a lot that you can control, some things you can't control, but ultimately on race day, when as a staff member, when you get to the event, and I'm fortunate enough to be at the start line to watch the start, and then quickly get to the finish line and watch the finish and watch the elites finish. And I'm in the media center at the Sydney Opera House on event day. Like, I've got honestly the best job. I get to see everything, and see all the social media, monitor all the social media, and see all the comments and all these sorts of things. It's honestly the best job you'd hope for on race day. All the work's done. All you need to do is just to see how the day plays out, and just document and show the world all these incredible people who are running the marathon on the day, whether it be Elliot Kipchoge or Sifan Hassan, or whether it be someone who's the final finisher on the day, and everyone in between. So yeah, it's a really, really good day to be a part of.
Yeah, and I imagine that like during this whole process, like you said, was it 7,000 runners in? Was it 7,000 you said in 23?
So say 17,000 registered in
17 and
2023. Yeah,
17. Yeah, sorry. And then this year it is
35,000 this year for our first
yeah.
major. Yeah.
And so with that, obviously there are a lot of changes that you guys needed to make. You did mention some of them, like, or all the scenarios that you have to prepare for. But what are the biggest changes that you guys have done to like go from where you were at 2 or 3 years ago compared to where you are today as a major?
Yeah, I think one of the big ones that people love to talk about is the course. It seems to be a really interesting topic when people see our elevation graph, and they say, "Oh, it's so hilly," and "Oh, and there's after the Harbour Bridge, it's really hilly," and "Oh, that hill at 40 kilometers at the end, you got to make sure you watch out for that." There is some hills in Sydney, and to be able to run across the Harbour Bridge and to finish at the Opera House, if you're going to do that, your course will have elevation in Sydney. But I think one of the things that, again, huge credit to Wayne and our operations team as well, is to be able to extend the course out to make it a much more even and a much smoother course over the last couple of years. In 2023, we had a section in Centennial Park, and for those who've been to Sydney, probably run around Centennial Park once or twice. It's a huge park in the inner eastern suburbs of the city. We do one loop of it now, so it's a 4 kilometers around the whole park. But 2 years ago and previous to that, we had to do 9 kilometers. So it was a long time to be spending in this park, and people
Yeah.
or runners were like, "Oh my god, like I'm not looking forward to that section." And I'd run it a couple of times before I started working here as well. And I remember I still have, PTSD of how tough it can be in that section of the course. So I think that changing that from 9 to 4 kilometers, to be able to extend further down one of our main roads, called Anzac Parade, which goes again into the eastern suburbs. You can think of it as one of the flat roads in Berlin. Like that's kind of what it's like. It's very flat. It's very wide, and it's between about 16 and 28 to 29 kilometers. So there's a good sort of 12, 13 kilometers of the middle of the race where you can really set up your race now, rather than sort of just making up kilometers and mileage around past the course. And the biggest reason why been able to make those course changes is the growth of the event demanded that those course changes to be made. So as we're on this candidacy journey, more and more of our stakeholders like Transport for New South Wales, the New South Wales government, and also all the landowners and the councils, they started to buy in and come in on the journey with us to say, actually, you know what, we are now more willing to close more roads and to do more things to help you also become a major, because ultimately it's good for the people of Sydney. It's good for the economy of Sydney as well, to have more people visiting, more people positively impacting the economy, hotel nights and food and beverage. And it's great to, and it's sorry, and Sydney's a very good city to have major events like the New Year's Eve fireworks and big sporting events, and obviously the Olympic Games in 2000. So yeah, that's one of the biggest changes that has happened, is the course, and also allowing more people at the start line and finish line, and to be able to extend our road closure times, all these sorts of things that are necessary. That's because of the councils and transport being able to allow us to be able to do that as we've grown as an event, to positively affect the community of Sydney and more broadly New South Wales.
Yeah, I was in Sydney last year, and I remember thinking that I really wanted to do the Sydney Marathon, totally regardless of the fact that you guys now are a major. But it's a beautiful place to run. I know that it was voted like the third best place in the world to run or something a while back. Not super surprised by that. But looking at the course, like if we're gonna dive a bit more into that, I'm curious because I think that to a lot of people, especially if you haven't been to Sydney and you see the course profile, it looks like there are so many turns, and that could kind of scare some people because it's like, oh, will that slow me down? Like I told my fiance, I don't think that's actually what it is. It's just like when you look at it from above, it looks like those turns and corners are much like more corners than they actually are. Will you say something about that for those who've looked at the profile or the course preview and they're like, oh, a lot of corners or
Yeah,
turns?
great point. And that's one thing that did change as well with the course. So we used to have hairpins because we weren't able to go from one road to another road, or from one side of the road to another side of the road, because we had to leave that road open because we had to stop. So again, that all plays into smoothing out or make it more of a straight line course, and therefore make it a faster course. So the course has got faster year on year because we've basically had more roads to run the event on. It's kind of that simple. Like the more the more road you have and the more options you have to make smoother turns, the faster the race is going to be, and the happier the runners are going to be as well. No one, regardless of whether you're running 2 hours, 5, or 6 hours, no one likes going around a hairpin, particularly towards the end of a marathon. It already hurts enough, let alone having to quickly stop on a dime. So that is definitely got better year on year, and a lot of people also ask, is the course this year going to be the course, forever? Is, now that you're a major, this year's course, is that going to stay? And I think that we're very, very close to what will now be the final course. I think that, we'll make maybe tweaks and modifications, small, slight modifications, but I think now is a course that the team is very proud to deliver, because it's been worked on year on year on year, with the ability to be able to do more and more to make it smoother, to make it faster. So for those who are looking at the course, yes, it has turns, but the turns are nowhere near as aggressive as what they once were. And often they are just going from say one street, and then if you take a racing line, you can run towards the gutter and down to the other side of the road. So it's a pretty nice course in 2025 to run. Is probably my point.
And I feel like we've also seen with a course like Boston, for instance, where, it doesn't really scare people from running, although there are hills. And also Boston is a kind of course where if you solve it in the right way, you can actually run pretty fast. And if I understood it correctly with the Sydney, the course, it's almost a bit opposite, where you have more hills in the first part and then it flattens out, right? So, yeah. And so from your perspective, those first hills or the first part of the marathon where it might be harder, what is the best way for the runners to think about that going into the Sydney Marathon?
I definitely think that the second half in terms of pure elevation is lower than the first half. That's a fact. I think the start of the marathon, it does drop about 80 meters in the first couple of kilometers, because you start in North Sydney and then drop down to the Harbour Bridge. So the first couple of kilometers, you almost just jog down the hill. It's actually a little bit like Boston in the way that Boston
Yeah.
starts too. You got that downhill start. A lot of people will go out quickly, and that's fine. That's their prerogative. But my suggestion is just roll down the hill, and then all of a sudden you're on the Harbour Bridge. So it's a very, very iconic, a really nice start to the marathon before you start getting into a little bit of that elevation in the first half. But I think like any sort of hilly race, people study the course profile, and people will often do hills in training as well. Like if you're looking to run a PB, if you're looking to run well in a marathon, and you know what the course is going to dish up to you, you train accordingly to that. So you're not going to train for Sydney like you would for Berlin or Chicago. Like you would train for it like you would New York or maybe Boston. And that's I actually kind of like that there's those different profiles across the 7 majors, because each one presents its own challenge as unique in its own way. And so, you know, once you start running Sydney, you don't have to check your watch every kilometer, particularly the first 10 or 15 kilometers, because it will be up and down. But what you can look for is your 10-kilometer split, or maybe your 5, 10, and 15-kilometer split. And then once you get to that 15-kilometer mark, and once you get up to the top of Anzac Parade, you can then see, well, now I've got 12 kilometers to really settle into my race. It's 15 kilometers into the run. I shouldn't really be trying that hard in the moment. Like, just still feel really easy. A lot of people say that the marathon doesn't start until between 30 to 32K. So you're still miles away from where you should start to feel the pinch. So if you're feeling good up to 15K and you've got a lot of the elevation already behind you, you can really then start to set up your race. And then, like I mentioned before, there is that little kicker between 38 and 40K. Mrs. Macquarie's Chair. So there's a single loop that goes down. It's a really beautiful road. It's called Art Gallery Road, that goes all the way down to the water's edge at Harbour, and then comes back up to basically where you entered into the road before you make the final right-hand turn, and then run down the last kilometre to the Sydney Opera House. But again, when you get to the 38-kilometer mark, you kind of know at that stage if you're having a good run, and if you are on a time that you're after, or even if you're looking just to run the whole the way without stopping, or whatever your goal might be. So yes, there's a little bit of a hill at the end, kind of like Heartbreak Hill at Boston, but it's all just part of the course. That's all just part of Sydney. And that's the beauty of it.
So save some energy for that last few kilometers there. So you know that there's a hill there that might break you if you push too hard. But I love that that perspective that you have on not necessarily looking at your watch like kilometer by kilometer or mile by mile, and rather look at your 10K time or 5K time, just because that kind of evens it out more. So because it might not be as flat or even of a a split time per kilometer or per mile. That's a great advice, I think. And you also did mention that you want the course to be unique, or all of the different marathons to be kind of unique. And I think that what, at least in my opinion, separates maybe Sydney from a lot of other marathons is that you are able to actually take in Sydney as a city, right? Like you're running across the bridge and you have the view of the whole of the opera house, and you're finishing next to the opera house. And can you say something to those who are, they're running Sydney Marathon obviously to perform and get a good or fast time, but also just to have a good time and experience Sydney? How much are you able to almost be a tourist in Sydney when running the course?
Absolutely. I mean, every highlight of the city of Sydney is encapsulated within the course. You cross the bridge, you go through all the major CBD locations, you finish at the Opera House, you go around Centennial Park, you run past some of our big sporting stadiums. We have two, one cricket and one football stadium that you go past at the 29 and the 34-kilometer mark. So you see a lot of Sydney. And you see a little bit of the suburbs as well, which is great. You go past one of our major universities, there'll be a lot of students hopefully out cheering for people, maybe similar to sort of Wellesley College of Boston, but we'll get there in a few years.
Hmm.
But yeah, like there's so much to take in. And you're right. You can be a tourist in the marathon, but also often when people sort of don't look at their watch every kilometer, when you do start to sort of just relax a little bit, particularly at the start of the race, often that's when you actually run your best race as well, because you're not holding yourself to such a high standard every single kilometer. The marathon is such a long way. It does start really later in the race, not at the beginning of the race. So because you can sort of just relax yourself and let yourself enjoy the city, take in the sights, take in the spectators as well. We have a lot of entertainment, a lot of spectators that are going to be out on the course this year. So really just lap up that atmosphere and the sights and the sounds, because all of a sudden you'll be out in an open road at 16 kilometers, and you kind of know, you're thinking, wow, that time passed really fast. Um, I think that a lot of people can run quickly if they run intelligently in Sydney, if they're trained appropriately as well. There are a lot of people who have run very, very good races here, who've smashed their PB because they've run it in their own way, but ultimately in the right way for them. So you can run quick in Sydney. Like you said, people run Boston quickly. There's been some stunning times at New York as well, and they have comparable elevation graphs to us in their own way. So you can absolutely there was a big myth that you can't run quick in Sydney. Like, I think once we see some of our elite athletes run this year, that will be well and truly dispel that myth.
Yeah, we're definitely going to talk more about those athletes because there are some big names on the start this year. But like you said with Boston, for instance, because although it's a hard course, the athletes who are doing or racing personal records there, they have a star behind their number because it's not kind of approved for, because it's a net downhill course. What is that like in Sydney?
Yeah, so I mean, we're also a net downhill course. We have a net downhill of 83 meters. So in the case that someone wanted to go out and run 2 hours and 10 seconds, or 2 hours and 9 minutes, we'd love it to happen. It's probably not going to happen. But outside of that, like, you don't see everyday runners not claiming PDs in Boston because it's a net downhill. It's already considered a much tougher course than, say, Berlin, Chicago, even though it's got that net downhill and it's an A to B course. So yeah, if you're running a PD in Boston, New York, or Sydney, like, congrats, you're a tough runner. But again, thousands and thousands of people do it every year. So it's absolutely doable. I would definitely say that the conditions, particularly for a marathon, probably play a much bigger role overall than the elevation does. Because I would absolutely take a 12 degrees in Sydney over a 26 degrees in New York, or sorry, 26 degrees in Berlin or Chicago. That's a chill.
Yeah. And last question on the course, and this is for the runners who are now like preparing. They're curious about what they can expect in terms of, you know, gels and water station and all of that. How frequently will they have water or any like drink mix? What kind of drink mix or energy can they expect? And do you also have any gels throughout the course?
Yeah, great question. So we have water stations every 2.5 kilometers. So there's a lot of water stations. I think there's trying to remember off the top of my head. I should know there's 16 or 17, I think. So there's plenty of water on the course. We have electrolyte, which is Powerade. Powerade's our electrolyte sponsor for 2025. It's a brilliant brand, well known all over the world. So they'll be providing the Mountain Blast flavor, which is the blue flavor of Powerade. That'll be every 5 kilometers. And then Goo Energy is our gel partner. They will have gels at the 20 and 30 kilometer marks, which again is plenty for people. Like, you know, a lot of people might want to use their own gels, but if you are looking to pick up gels in the course, that you probably wouldn't be having many gels before the 20 kilometer mark. Otherwise, you probably pre-purchase them anyway. So yeah, there'll be plenty out there, and like I said, with the growth of the runners, we've obviously scaled accordingly to how many runners are out on course with the water, the Powerade, and the gels.
And then obviously you could argue that this is also part of the course, but I know that you guys have done such a good job marketing and like telling the people of Sydney that this is happening. I think was you who said on another podcast recently that your goal is that not one single person in Sydney will like not know about the Sydney Marathon this weekend. How do you like? What can people expect in terms of the people of Sydney and spectators along the course?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's undoubtedly one of the things that we've put a lot of focus on. It's all great to get the runners out there, but you really need the city to support the event. I think that's really what sets the majors apart from the other major big marathons around the world. And there are huge marathons with sometimes more people. You know, there's 40, 45, 50,000 person marathons in America and in South America and across Europe. But what the majors has is a very different atmosphere, and that atmosphere is created by the spectators cheering for hours and hours for, you know, for the most part, random people that they've never met before and they might not ever see again. But on that day in those cities, in London, New York, Chicago, Boston, Berlin, Tokyo, for that one day per year, everyone knows exactly what's going on and they all want to go out and support what is happening in terms of this human movement and this movement of the city. And so that's really what we want to happen in Sydney. We want to get the message out there to say, this is our moment. You know, this is our first year as a major. This is the benchmark of the other sticks. You know, show the people this is what's happening in these other 6 places around the world, regardless of whether you're a runner or whether you like sports, or even if you just want to come out and just cheer on people from your city and from 156 countries around the world. It's a special day that only happens once a year. And by the way, there's lots of things that you can do with your family. There's lots of great deals and discounts off coffee in the morning, off a pub lunch, and during the day. We have after parties at some of our nicest pubs in Sydney. We have DJs and MCs, and there's a lot of things that we've tried to invest in the event to bring people out, not just to watch the race, but to also really enjoy the day and enjoy themselves whilst they see everyone go past. So yeah, there's a lot that goes into it, and there's lots of different marketing techniques that you can put out there, but overall the messaging is really consistent in that come and support Sydney. So it's not come out and support an additional your individual runner. It's come out and support the city that you live in, that you're proud to live in. Because yeah, as Australians and particularly in Sydney, we're super proud of the city that we have, and we love the people, we love the beaches, and this is an event that's ours, and we need to be able to support that. So it's easy for me to say that, obviously, but I think
No, but you're convincing me. Look, I'm getting the chills here. I'm not Australian. I've been to Sydney once, but I think this is great. I love that way of thinking, and I also think that in terms of the uniqueness that the Australian people, in a great way, in my opinion, that is a different kind of breed, right? Like it's a different energy. There's something about that where I don't know that there's something there, and I think that for runners, it will also be a lot of fun. Like you putting on this show, you have the American spirit in Boston, which is amazing and it's great. But I still think that if you've done a major in the US, you will get a very different vibe with Australian fans. I don't know if you agree with me on that, but that would have been my expectation at least.
yeah, I think you're right. I think again, like the courses are unique, the people are unique as well. That's what makes the majors so beautiful, and that's what makes running around the world so beautiful. You go to a different country and you won't get the same experience as what you do at home. That's why people love to travel and run these marathons or just run in general. So the yeah, Australians, like we are pretty relaxed. We are friendly people. I feel like those who are making the trip out to Australia, they will really feel that on course this year, because ultimately we want to support every single person that's coming from all over the world, and we're a very multicultural country as well. We really understand it and celebrate every single culture. So yeah, I'm really, really excited to see how many people actually come out and support the event this year, and to hear the feedback from the runners as well as to what they thought the atmosphere was like too.
Do you have any numbers for like for the expectations of how many people will be out there? I don't know if you're able to know at all beforehand.
Yeah, I like we've put the number out there. We would love to see 300,000 spectators, which we
Wow.
again would that would be huge for us. If you think about
Hmm.
some of the biggest stadiums in the world are about 75,000 people. It's 4 stadiums. Like when you start to think about it that way, it's like, wow, okay, that's a lot of people. Yeah, they're stretched out quite a bit across the course, but ultimately we don't. And to be fair, last year there weren't that many places on the course where there weren't spectators. Like we want that sort of not huge amount of noise for the 42 kilometers. Like we're not going to get to the Boston, New York levels in year one. We don't expect to, but what we would like is for people to feel supported sort of every step on their marathon journey, particularly in those later stages, which again, it helps going back into the city for the last, 8 to 10 kilometers of the course where a lot of the people will be located, and a lot of our spectator zones where we do have those DJs and MCs, a lot of that is going to be concentrated in the city because naturally that's where we know a lot of the people are going to be coming. We want, yeah, we want people to kind of feel like, hey, there is that majors atmosphere here, and in a way, it's the Australian majors atmosphere, and for us, that is just really exciting to think about us being on that level because so often we talk about the runners, but I think in this year in particular, the spectators have become so much more of a focus because we know that is really one of the defining things that sets the majors apart from the rest of the marathons around the world.
And I guess one of the things that you've done is like because you have some really big names on on the start this year, and I assume that it's not easy to get all those names to Sydney. And although it's a great marathon, it's still a job that has to be done. Can you say something about the elite runners and also the wheelchair class? Like, say something about what you've done there and who you're most excited to see, or what you expect from those.
Yeah, our field is unbelievable. We've never seen anything like it in Australia before. I think we as Australian runners and fans of running in Australia often look with a slight bit of jealousy at the other European and Virgin races, thinking, "Wow, wouldn't it be great one day to get Kipchoge to Australia? And everyone thought it was a pipe dream. Like no one really believed, particularly, even 2+ years ago, that Kipchoge was really going to come out whilst he was still running at a professional level as one of the best runners in the world. No one thought he was actually going to come out, except for Wayne. Wayne Lyon, our race director, he always knew and thought we can get Elliot. Like we're on that journey, we're on that track to be able to get him, and we did this year. And I think it's very apt that in the first year as a major, we have the greatest of all time. Like it just feels right. It feels like when we announce Elliot Kipchoge as part of the field, it kind of announced us as a major even after we were announced as a major. Like if that makes sense, like it just became this sense of validity. Like, oh, okay, they've made it. Oh, they've got Elliot. All right, okay, City is the real deal from the weight perspective. But I think also announcing Sifan Hassan, I think it's great to have Elliot and he is the greatest of all time, and having him on the start line's amazing. But to get that equally as important runner. And I say important because Sifan transcends the times that she runs and the medals that she wins at Olympic Games. I think what she's done for the sport, for women in sport, but for Muslim women around the world, she is this sort of incredible like figure in the sport of running. Kind of the way in which Kelvin Kiptum was. He and Elliot Kipchoge, like you get these very, very few people in running who transcend the sport, and she is absolutely one of them. They both do. So to have both of them running this year is an incredible opportunity for Australia to show Elliot and Sifan what Sydney is all about and what Australian running is all about. Elliot has released a mini documentary series, which has been fantastic to upload. I've got nothing to do with the production. It's all his team at NN Running in Kenya. They've done an amazing job of capturing his thoughts and his movements as he trains towards Sydney. And the one thing he consistently says is, "I want to make Australia a running nation." And it's kind of like
Yeah,
this.
I wanted to talk about that.
Yeah,
That was amazing. I was like, I told my fiance when we watched it yesterday, I was like, I can't believe he says that, like that is such a good like tagline kind of for the Sydney Marathon and him. It just makes it perfect.
Well, like everything he says is kind of like he's one of those people that you can't just sit and listen to, and you could listen to for hours and hours because everything he says is so universally relatable. So when he travels somewhere, he's doing more than just running a marathon. He's changing the way in which people view running, view him, and view the marathon that takes place in that city. So I truly believe that Sydney will never be the same after this Sunday because people will look at the marathon, but people will look at running through the eyes of someone like Elliot and think, wow, it actually it can make a monumental difference to my life. And yes, it came from someone who runs under 2 hours for a marathon, but the way in which he inspires people, he instills hope and joy in people through running. It's amazing. No, I've never seen anything like it before in the sport. Um, so that's Sifan and Elliot. And with the wheelchair field, we have the other greatest of all time, Marcel Hugh from Switzerland, the Swiss Bullet. And again, maybe not quite as many people know Marcel, but as a big fan of running and wheelchair marathon, I think it's just incredible that we have Marcel coming because, again, he's one of these athletes that he's achieved everything. He doesn't have to come to Australia and Sydney to race. Like he could just go off and win another 10 majors and then just collect more trophies elsewhere. But again, he's coming to Sydney because he sees an opportunity to make his impact on the legacy of the TCS Sydney Marathon. And same with Manuel Shah and Susanna Scaroni, these incredible female wheelchair athletes. Like we really do have the very, very, very best in each of the able-bodied and wheelchair fields. I don't think Wayne and the team could really put a better field together. if they tried. So yeah, to say that we're excited and we're honored to have these very special people and athletes come to the event is an understatement this year.
Yeah, and I want to touch on the last part you said, because obviously with the wheelchair field being so strong, that will also kind of put a spotlight on that for the Sydney Marathon. For it's I think it's easy for me, and forgive me for that. Like, I talk about the course as someone who is able to run, right? But for those who want to go to Sydney and they want to race in the wheelchair field, what is the course like for that? What kind of measurements have been done to make sure that it's the best possible experience for uh, wheelchair racers?
Yes, it's a great question. It's probably something that's not talked about a lot, but is incredibly important, particularly for the wheelchair athletes on a hillier course. They go very, very fast downhill. Like they go over 60 kilometers an hour at some points down hills, which is
Wow.
faster than a car in a 60 kilometer an hour zone. So obviously, sometimes that can bring great danger, particularly if you're having to go around sharp corners. And we talked about before getting rid of hairpin corners because of the measures that we're able to do. So that affects able-bodied athletes greatly, but you can imagine how much more greatly that can affect positively the elite wheelchair athletes. So they have certainly been a factor in us being able to smooth out the course, literally for the best wheelchair athletes in the world. And one of our great wheelchair athletes who is taking a little bit of time off at the moment, Madison de Rosario, she's been a really big advocate for us, having raced over the last couple of years for the wheelchair field and helping make recommendations as to how this event can become more accessible for wheelchair athletes, regardless of whether elite wheelchair athletes or day chair athletes and everyone in between. Um, she's been amazing, and she is an amazing ambassador for disability sports in Australia. So yeah, kudos to Madison and to also other athletes like Christy Dawes, another very very good wheelchair athlete in Australia, has been to like 7 Paralympic Games or something incredible. And these sorts of wheelchair athletes, and we have a very rich history of them, have provided a lot of guidance into being able to help us make that course and make the event more accessible as a whole. And I think, again, because we've made those changes along the way with those guiding voices and opinions, we've been able to secure these athletes like Marcel, like Susanna, like Daniel Romanchuk from America. Josh Cassidy is coming back after winning the men's race the last couple of years in a row. And yeah, it's great for the sport, and it's great for children and adults, whether they have a disability or not, to see these athletes perform so well on such a big occasion in Australian running and elite wheelchair racing.
Yeah, it's really impressive what you guys have been able to do this year with that field, both with the wheelchair and the runners, and then you also do have some in the runners field. You have a couple of really good Australian runners like Brett Robinson and Jessica Stenson, and I guess like the perfect day for you guys would be if they were really up there, kind of challenging the podium. Or what are your expectations for the Australian runners?
Well, I think the Australians love being the underdog. Yeah, it really suits our country when it comes to sports in general. A lot of people often write off Australia because of the powerhouses of America and England and whatever sport it might be. So yeah, I think they'll probably like going in. There's not a lot of it's probably podium expectation. I think is probably fair to say, but Australians perform very very well, particularly on a home stage, as we've seen over the Sydney 2000 Olympics and so many international sport events since then. So yeah, look, it'd be interesting. I think Brett's training quite well. Jess Stenson is insane. She always performs well, particularly on hilly courses. She won the gold medal at the Commonwealth Games in Birmingham on a very hilly course. And I'm friends with Eloise Wellings, who was also in that race, and she was saying to me that just that day was just a cut above the rest. Just in terms of the physical stamina, but also just the mentality to be able to run fast and to drop people on hills. It takes a very kind of very strong runner to be able to do that. So I think this course will suit Jess really, really well. Um, I think Liam Adams is another very tough Australian runner. I think he'll be right up there with Brett, pushing the pace. And look, I think in terms of the Australians, no, they might not be right on the heels of Kipchoge yet the 30-kilometer mark and Sifan, but I'd like to think, and I think they would definitely think that they will be in with chances. Just to put themselves in the position that if they have a good day and maybe a couple of others ahead of them don't have such a good day, or those ahead of them on paper, they might be an outside chance of a podium. And what an incredible story that would be to have an Australian on a podium with fields of this caliber in the first year of being a major. I think that home crowd advantage as well is going to help them hugely. As soon as people see Jess coming past Brett, Liam, and Lisa Waitman as well, who's been to a bunch of Olympic games in the marathon, these sorts of athletes will get a good cheer from a home crowd, and Aussies love cheering on Aussie. So yeah, I think they'll all perform quite well.
I really hope so. Real quickly before we finish that, like the elite field here, what are and now I just want you to guess, like what do you think the winner times will be?
Oh, that's a loaded question. Well, touch wood. I don't know where the wood is here. The
I'll do it for you.
thank you. The weather's looking good this weekend. It is looking good. That plays a huge part in times. You have to have a good day and good weather conditions to run quickly at that particular level. The course record for the men is 2:06:18, and the women is 2:21:41. I can fairly safely say that both of those are going to go down this weekend. So I would love to see, we would love a 2:04. I mean, that would be phenomenal if we got a 2:04, but I think a 2:05 is very, very realistic. It would, again, I'm not sure anything to do with splits and halfway pacing. Even if I did, I probably couldn't say anything, but I think 2:04 to 2:05 for the men would be phenomenal. And for the women, Sifan Hassan is capable of anything. I think she and Bridget Kosgei, I didn't mention Bridget before, former world record holder, 2:14 athlete in her own right. I think if both those ladies and our defending champion working at Shadessa, like if they work together and if they go with the paces on the day, I think we could definitely be looking at maybe like a 2:16 or something, 2:16, 2:17 for the ladies. I think that 2:21 from Workinesh last year was a great run, but there is a lot of room for that women's course record to go down this year.
Yeah, can't wait to see. And then you did mention Sydney 2000. It's 25 years since the Olympics. And have you done anything in terms of like the course or anything like that to almost celebrate that, like it's a quarter of a century? I saw on Instagram that there was something about the starting line. Is it the same one? What is similar?
Yeah, great question. I think the main thing that we did this year, which we were very fortunate to have the Australian Olympic Committee support the initiative, was to bring back the Sydney 2000 volunteer shirts. We created a design that it's not exactly like the Olympic Games volunteer shirts, but it's quite similar and it pays respect to that shirt from 25 years ago. A lot of people, and again, I was 7 years old when the Olympics happened, so I've got a very sort of faint recollection, but a lot of people who are associated with those Olympic Games or even just watched on TV or came to watch it in Australia will often talk about the volunteers and the volunteerism movement that happened as part of the Olympic Games. There were 40,000 volunteers, so more volunteers at the Olympics 25 years ago than there are people running the marathon someday who made that games possible. And I think it was that friendly Australian nature where people came across those volunteers and they were just always willing to help. Where's the stadium? Where's the closest sandwich shop? How do I get to my seat? Wherever it was, they were always willing to help, and that's kind of that Australian way. So to be able to celebrate that part of the Olympic Games 25 years later with 5,000 volunteers that we have this year is just something that feels really, really nice and almost makes you feel a little bit warm just in thinking about it. Because again, the volunteers for the TCS Sydney Marathon are such a big part of the event and any of the major or any big marathon around the world. The events actually don't happen without volunteers. And we're very, very lucky in Sydney to have such a strong volunteer community who is very happy to help the runners out, spectators out, but also each and every runner and each of the other volunteers as well. So that's one of the biggest legacy pieces that we've had. But also the start line itself. We moved the start line from Milson's Point, which was just underneath the Harbour Bridge. You used to run 500 meters up a slight incline, then turn right, and then you'd already be on the bridge. We now go back to Miller Street and next to North Sydney Oval, which is where the Sydney 2000 Olympic Marathon started. So the start line is not exactly in the same place, but I think it's like 300 meters behind the actual start line for the marathon this year. And a lot of the corrals are going to be they'll be standing on the Sydney 2000 start line as they're walking up to start their marathon. So again, it's a very nice piece of history that isn't lost on us. We celebrated, I think, in the start line video that we put up last week. We always start off by saying, "Hey, here is the start line of the 2000 Olympics." And I think, again, for those who remember it, or even for those who know about it, which I think is a lot of people around the world, it's just a really nice piece of history that we've been able to, reconnect with the event, with the start line going back to its original home.
I'm getting a great sense of FOMO here, feeling like I should have been there. But I guess like I'm not the only one when hearing all of this and following this this week who's gonna be like, I really need to get to Sydney next year for the Sydney Marathon 2026. And I know that it's got much more popular, obviously, with you guys now being a major. But how do you apply or sign up? Is there a qualification to now be a part of the Sydney Marathon? And also, what are the chances to actually get in? We saw 1.1 million in London and a very small chance of getting in.
Well, I can say it's going to be a little bit easier than London. However, I think that every marathon in the world is probably a little bit easier than London at the moment. I think when we were announced as a major, shortly after that, we announced that by necessity we were going to a ballot system. So we reported 79,000 ballot entries for this year, which was fantastic for us. But also, I feel like a lot of people saw that number and thought, oh, you know what? Maybe I'm in with a chance. Like they're only getting 79,000 compared to the 1.1 and hundreds of thousands for all the other majors. I think that will definitely increase this year. I think that a lot of people will see Sydney on the global stage, but as a major for the first time on a global stage this year. And we are looking to put on the very, very best version of Sydney and the TCS Sydney Marathon as we possibly can. And then we will also be announcing the ballot date on race day. So it's going to be really interesting, like all the hype of event day and everything that comes with it. But then we're also going to say, hey, here's the ballot date. Why don't you? I I'm not sure if we're going to be opening the sign-ups at that stage, but we will be telling people when the ballot is going to be opening. So just capitalizing, I guess, on all that hype, but again, giving people the best opportunity and the most information as we can to let them know everything that they can do to try and get on the start line in 2026. Outside of the ballot, for those who might miss out on the general ballot, we have an increasingly popular but also a really good international travel program and also a charity program as well. And they will have more spots. I think they've got a few more spots next year as well. So that's really exciting, and to have the support of all the charities and the travel partners, that's an increasing program as well year on year. As there been so much more international demand for the event, it's been a great party event, and again, just giving more people more opportunities to race a major marathon. So we'll come out with all that information on and from race day as we get towards that ballot date and starting to announce our travel and charity programs. But ultimately, like, I just feel that when people put themselves out there, it can be really easy to feel down and out when you see these insane numbers from London and New York. But the the chances are you're going to get in at some point. It might not be in 2026, but the chances are, particularly in 2026, they're probably a little bit better than what it's going to be in 2030. So my best
Yeah.
suggestion is just to put your name in there. You put your hat in the ring and give yourself a chance to run it. And if you do miss out, there are always other options, just like all the other majors, to get a guaranteed spot.
I can tell that it almost hurts you to say that not everyone will get a spot, which I
It
love.
does. It does, because I've been on the receiving end. Don't you worry. London every year.
Yeah, but is there any way for, like, so the runners who, so for some of the marathons you have qualifying times still that there's a ballot within, like, faster runners or something like that. Obviously you have the elite, but then you also have more, like, say, sub 250 marathoners or something like that. Is that also a thing with the Sydney, or is it just the ballot and the things you just mentioned with the tour operators and charities?
Yeah, we do. We did debut a high performance program this year. So I guess it was year one, and we just wanted to test the waters just to get a couple hundred or a few hundred runners in. So we had the times of 2:35 and 2:55 for men and women, and it was received really well. We got quite a few applications, and there are quite a few runners from all over the world taking part in that in the high performance program. That's something that Wayne is really keen to build on year. We know that there's very established age group time qualifiers for a lot of the majors. Boston is probably the most famous, where you have to get a BQ to run, but the BQ times are always a point of contention, and people love to talk about how far under the qualification
Yep.
time you need. We certainly won't be getting to that level. We want to try and stay as open as we possibly can, but at the same time also recognize that those very good marathoners all over the world, and of different age brackets, we would like to have an avenue for them to also race Sydney as well. So whilst we don't quite have the details right at this point in time, it's something that we will build out and communicate in the weeks and months following the event this year for 2026.
Cool. Okay, so last question about the marathon. We're getting closer to the end of our conversation here. Before I'm going to ask you a little bit about your own running, but I was reading on, or I saw someone posting on Instagram yesterday, because, like, when you get a spot at, say, Boston, your bib number almost at the time you get your spot. And then someone wrote yesterday that I haven't received my bib number yet. Should I be concerned? So I wouldn't have been concerned, but I'm still curious. And if people listening to this, I'm going to try to post this episode as soon as we're done here. But if they listen to this episode, they're concerned they haven't gotten their bib numbers yet. What can you tell them?
That's so funny. I feel like I just got a message like 2 hours ago from one of my colleagues, and exactly the same question came across. Look, it's a fair question, right? Like, you just assume, hey, like, I'm entered, where's my bib number? We dynamically allocate bib numbers. So your bib number itself isn't actually allocated until you go to expo to collect your bib. So you people don't have a number. People obviously have an entry, like everyone's registered, everyone's going to show up on Sunday, but the actual bid number isn't allocated until they collect at expo. We started that process, I think, a few years ago because it dramatically cuts down the lines at expo or just the wait time, because literally our volunteers and staff at the bid collection desk will literally just walk to a rack and then take the next number. It's that easy. Then they scan the QR code on the registration email, they scan the bib, and then that's your number. So it's like Christian 101, Christian, you're now 101. And a lot of people don't understand that or realize that because, again, they haven't done Sydney before. I only found out about it like a couple of years ago. So yeah, it just creates a lot more efficiency for our team and ultimately a better experience for the runners when they're going through the expo.
So for those of you who are listening to this on the plane or in a taxi on the way to the airport or something, and you're like, am I traveling to Sydney without a bib number? You're good. You'll get one.
You're sweet. We'll sort you out. Don't worry.
Okay, James, I'm curious. You are a passionate runner yourself. You've been working now with the Sydney Marathon for a couple of years. Are you sad not to be able to run it yourself this year?
I do get FOMO every year, although this year probably not as strong as I've been putting in about 15 kilometers a week. So I'm very glad I'm not running a marathon this weekend. I would love to run it one day. I have no idea when that would be. Probably as long as I keep working at the TCS Sydney Marathon, I probably won't be able to run because I've got much bigger things to do. You know, I always say to people, I'm much more valuable not running than running. Like if I'm running, well, am I really contributing to the event? Whereas if I'm behind a desk or at the finish line doing something, then I'm making a bigger impact. So that I actually get a lot of enjoyment out of. And there's also so many other races around Australia that I can do. So yeah, a little bit of FOMO, not so much this year.
That's great. Hey, I really, really appreciate you taking the time to chat about this, and I can't wait to experience the Sydney Marathon myself at some point. Hopefully next year, if I'm lucky. Good luck with your event. Yeah, like I told you before we started recording, I'm so impressed with you guys and everything that you've done, and I can't wait to watch the event or follow it. And I guess that's maybe the last final question and very important one. If people want to watch this, is there a live stream somewhere? Are we able to watch it, or is it just through paid channels?
Yeah, I mean, we're broadcasting to 182 countries around the world this year. So chances are your local broadcaster will have the TCS Sydney Marathon on. We have it in our FAQs on our website, all the broadcast partners for all the different countries. So like you would look up the broadcast for any of the other major marathons. We have a full list on our website under FAQs. In Europe, a lot of those countries are the Eurosport is the broadcaster, which typically will broadcast a lot of those marathons as well. So again, chances are in Europe it might be Eurosport, but have a look at the FAQs for all that. In terms of after the elite race, we will have a live stream on our YouTube from 10 a.m. Sydney time. So sorry, the broadcast will start from 6 a.m. Sydney time. The elite wheelchair race at 6:15, and then the elite men's and women's races at 6:30, and then the broadcast will end at 10 o'clock, 10 a.m. But then from there we roll over to the extended broadcast or the live stream component, where we've invested a lot of time into really trying to capture all the amazing stories after Kipchoge, Hassan, Salpuj, and Sadur Scaroni. And I think that is going to be really cool this year. We tried it a little bit last year for the first time, and we saw the potential in the people that were coming across the line. Your everyday runner just having a microphone in their face, and how do you feel? You just ran under 4 hours, and people were crying, and it was amazing. So we're like, we have to build on this for the next year, particularly when we're a major. so we can really tell these stories of the everyday runners. So that's something I'm actually really excited for. Hopefully, the world to continue to tune into on our TCS Sydney Marathon YouTube channel to keep on seeing all the incredible people that are finishing the race and all the amazing stories that they have to tell as well. So that will be from 10 a.m. I think up until about 2 p.m. So there'll be a good live stream on our YouTube channel, TCS Sydney Marathon. And then, of course, on the socials, we're quickly growing on Instagram. It's definitely our platform of choice in terms of social media. Of course, Facebook as well. We'll have all the coverage across those channels. But yeah, just stay in touch with the socials, watch the broadcasts, jump on the YouTube after the elite races, and yeah, just see everything that Sydney has to offer from wherever you are in the world.
And for people who are attending the event in terms of social media, what's your message to them? Should they tag you? Should they use a hashtag? What is the best way to share so everyone can see it?
Yeah, definitely tag us at Sydney_marathon. We love seeing all the stories. There is so much content. It was unbelievable last year. I don't know how we go cope this year, but we love seeing it. We might get 100 notifications a minute at times, like literally at the height, it's dozens of notifications every minute, but we love seeing it all. So please tag us at Sydney_marathon and just, enjoy the day. Like, honestly, soak it up wherever you are, whatever you're doing, whether you're running, spectating, volunteering, just, enjoy everything it has to offer. I can't wait for everyone to experience something that, Sydney, Australia's never seen before.
I think that's a great way to end this conversation. Thank you again so much, James, and good luck this weekend.
Thanks so much, Christian.
I'm sitting here with some serious FOMO after this conversation. I really wish I was in Sydney this weekend. I hope to be there next year, ready for the 2026 Sydney Marathon. I hope that for you as a listener, you really got some more information if you're doing the Sydney Marathon this weekend, but also if you're planning on doing it in the future, that you get more of a feeling of what it's going to be like. If you haven't been to Sydney already, you really should get on that plane and get over there or down under there, because it's such an amazing city, a lot of great people, and I can't wait to run that marathon one day, because I think that it's going to be one of a kind in a lot of ways. I really just want to thank James for his time. I know that it's a busy week. There's a lot of things going on, and with only 6 days to go, I can only imagine that there's not a lot of time left to do a lot of other things. So him taking the time to talk to the Marathon Podcast, I really appreciate that. So this was a very special episode of the Marathon Podcast. I just wanted to be to post this one since we are so close to the Sydney Marathon, and I know a lot of people will have a lot of questions, and I hope that this episode answered a lot of those questions, whether you are running it this year or planning on running it. Next episode will actually be with Kofusi, and we're gonna stick to the same schedule, so that episode will come out on Thursday. I don't think Kofusi needs any introduction, but he is a big name in the space of running. He does a lot of shoe reviews, he has running vlogs, and he's been in the space for a very long time. I found it super interesting to talk to him about everything running shoes, about the best shoes on the market today, about training in carbon-plated shoes, and also curious to hear more about his own running journey. He's doing the Sydney Marathon. He's actually on his way to Sydney as we speak, and that was such a good conversation. So stay tuned for the next episode. Follow this podcast to get it in your feed automatically, and if you haven't already, give this podcast a review, share it with a friend, and thank you so much for listening to the Marathon Podcast. You listen to the Marathon Podcast, brought to you by Wild Studio.